Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the city's very first Historic Preservation Awards. My name is Sherith Marshall, and I'm a senior planner with the City of Bristol in the Community Development Department. We're really excited to be here tonight to celebrate historic preservation in the city and to recognize those people who have put in so much love and effort into preserving some of Bristol's community treasures. We thank each and everybody for attending tonight. And I'd like to recognize just a few folks, and then we'll turn over the program for some opening remarks by Mayor Margaret Feierabend. I'd like to recognize City Council, Mayor Feierabend, Vice Mayor Michelle Denise, Councilman Chad Keene, Councilman Jack Young, and Councilwoman Lee Powers, City Manager Bill Sora, Interim Community Development Director and Director of Public Works Tim Beavers. And I'd like to thank just a couple people who are really instrumental in getting us here tonight and instrumental in making this event happen. I'd like to thank the Paramount Theater for hosting and for helping us set up. City Council for giving us this project. It's been a real joy to work on. All of the people who took time and effort to fill out an application to submit. The city's Community Relations Department, Director Terry Talbert, Jay Mahelbert, and Brennan Dye. And a special props to Brennan Dye, who's actually over here hiding behind the TV, but he's been responsible for the excellent video you're going to see here in just a few minutes. I'd like to thank Heather Moore, who's been my colleague and fellow planner on this project and who's been hard at work the time we've taken to develop the awards program. I'd like to thank the City of Bristol, Virginia Historic Preservation Awards Committee, and especially Catherine Brillhart for their advice and for graciously sharing their experience with us as we built our awards program. And then I'd like to thank the City of Bristol, Tennessee Historic Preservation Awards Committee. And I'd like, if you're here, if you wouldn't mind, stand up, and we'd like to recognize you for your input, involvement, and expertise in this project. So we have Susan Tanner, we have Kelly Moran, Rebecca Wilkerson, Gray Stothert, Maggie Bishop, Linda Kirk, and Joel Staten. So thank you to this group who helped us so much to get our program up and running. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Margaret Feierabend, who has a few opening remarks for us.
Thank you, Sherith, and very glad to be here tonight with you all. Thanks for being here. A quote, at its most basic, preservation is about protecting places that matter to each of us. We want our children to know these places. We want these places to stand as beacons for us and for those who come after us, to tell our stories and the stories of our communities and our lives. This is Stephanie Meeks, who's President and CEO of the National Trust for Historic Places. I'm very pleased to see the beginnings of this recognition. I, too, want to give a nod and great thanks to Bristol, Virginia for taking the lead several years ago with this recognition program. We learned our lesson here in Bristol the hard way. Bunting's drugstore went down when it never should have. Some buildings went down prior to that time, but Bunting's was painful to most. Our Bristol community has a broad spectrum of historic buildings. Downtown has several eras and architecture styles represented. It's time to celebrate and to thank those community members and citizens who have gone out of their way, frequently had blood, sweat, and tears involved to passionately save or improve their home or building. Special thanks to these folks, ones recognized here tonight, ones who will be recognized in the future. And thanks to our first committee who was introduced, and to the city staff who administered the program. One of the most passionate historic preservationists for our community that I've worked with a lot, Mary Beth Ranero, says, "If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where to go." It's so important to know your background, where you came from, how you developed. Our past makes us what we are today. We need to understand and embrace the past to move to the future. We have such rich histories in our individual lives, where we came from, what we had and didn't have, what we cherished. All this goes into making what we are today and in the future as individuals, as families, as a community. And to end with a complimentary quote from James Baldwin from the website for the Trust for Historic Places. The great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it. History is literally present in all that we do. Thank you, and let's celebrate.
Thank you, Mayor. So the purpose of our awards program is to recognize projects of excellence in historic preservation and the efforts of the individuals responsible for rehab projects in our community. We were very fortunate to have several people submit nominations to choose from this year, and the award winners were selected for a few reasons. It's because they exhibited commitment to sensitive renovations, repairs, and/or compatible building additions, because they have had a positive impact on the community or on historic resources in Bristol, for their overall quality of work, and because they'll serve as examples for other historic preservation projects. So tonight we will recognize a winner in each of the categories listed in your program. I'll start with a brief introduction, and then we'll have the property owner tell you a little bit about why and what they worked on and why it's important. And then, if you will, once the video is concluded, I'll ask you to come up here, and Mayor Feierabend will present you with a plaque and a photo of your home or building. So we'll start tonight with the Bristol Downtown Commercial Historic District. And our first winner for this first category is the Bristol Renaissance Center, located at 636 Shelby Street, Mr. Joseph Gregory and Champion Property Development. This building is known as the E.W. King Building. The structure is located on Shelby Street and was designed by C.B. Kierfot, a prominent Bristol architect of the early 20th century. It was built around 1929, and it was originally the home of the Big Jack Manufacturing Company, which produced overalls and work clothes. Though it was designed for industrial use, the building has wonderful architectural detail with Gothic elements, including the arched vestibule entrance on Shelby Street with the E.W. King inscription above the door that we all know. It has cast concrete wall buttresses and upper pilasters with Doric capitals, which now light up beautifully at night. The building exterior has remained remarkably intact, and the building has been meticulously renovated in this recent past. The building will now be used for office and retail uses, and is just a tremendous asset for downtown Bristol.
It honors the legacy of the King family that played such a significant role in the founding and early history of Bristol. It reminds the citizens of the early role that the manufacturing and distribution played in the success of Bristol as a great place to live. And it represents an excellent example of the current and outstanding renaissance that is occurring in downtown Bristol from public and private partnerships. You can see there have been major changes in the windows. The outside has been restored. The interior was basically warehouse type, and that has now been converted into office spaces throughout. So it's really a top-notch Class A office space on the inside, much more energy efficient than it ever was in the past due to the new windows. Getting those windows was quite a challenge in keeping with getting the historical tax credits that we needed to get and working with the Department of Interior because they had very rigid specifications for that. And so we worked with them very closely to get windows that they liked and windows that maintained the historical character of this great building. One thing we should also mention is just how great it is working with an accomplished and experienced firm like Burwell that understands the unique complexities of historical restorations, and they've worked in so many projects of merit in the Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia area, and we're really appreciative of the work they've done on this project.
someone's here, Mr. Gregory or someone from Champion, if you'd like to come up and accept your award. Thank you. Congratulations. Awesome. All right. Next up, we have the Fairmount Neighborhood Historic District. The award winner for this neighborhood is Mrs. Emily Blackwell of 423 Pennsylvania Avenue. Emily's home is an example of a 3-bay center gable house with a Dutch colonial revival influence. It was originally built in the 1900s, around 1913, by Dr. McMinn Pearson, a physician who practiced in Bristol for some 30 years. The home has been lovingly restored by Mrs. Blackwell. A true preservationist, she kept as many historic materials original to the house as possible and used replacement materials only when necessary. She even restored all of the wood windows, stripping and reglazing them herself.
Well, I think it's important to restore any of these historic properties because how they were made and what they were made from, sometimes it can no longer be found. And once they're gone, you can't get them back. They can't be rebuilt. You can't buy the things that they used to make them. For the exterior, we have had trim custom made, we've had siding custom made, just like it was if we've had to replace anything. Anything that didn't absolutely have to be replaced, we have salvaged and just continued to use. All of the windows are still original. A lot of these old homes, they lose their windows over time. People think that they can, replace them with newer windows. I think it changes the entire looks of the house once you do that. So we still have all the original windows. They've all been restored. Inside, like I said, we've used a lot of salvage materials, old sinks, refinished. All the hardwood floors are still original in the house. None of those have been replaced. All of the original trim is still in the house. We've refinished a lot of that. I'm just really excited that Bristol seems to be really embracing, preservation and history, and downtown is, coming back alive. This neighborhood is coming back alive. I was told when I bought this house, don't even go look there. You don't want to live there. They've been trying to bring this neighborhood back for years and it's never going to make it. And I said, well, challenge accepted.
Congratulations. Okay, next up we have the Holston Avenue Neighborhood District, and the award winner for this district is Mrs. Deborah Kennedy at 916 7th Avenue. The home located here at 916 7th Avenue is an example of an American foursquare, a home type that was very popular in the United States from the mid-1890s to the late 1930s. Miss Kennedy's home was built in the 1920s, originally to house retired ministers and other church-affiliated staff. The home served that purpose until the 1980s when it was converted into 4 apartments. Miss Kennedy purchased the property just a few years back and decided to transform it back into a single-family home, and has done a beautiful job bringing back the original character and transforming the structure into a happy home on one of Bristol's loveliest streets. Mrs. Kennedy's neighbors definitely agree, as a few ganged up and nominated her to surprise her with this award.
Nobody builds a house and thinks that it's going to go to ruin. I mean, they build it with love and they build it with care, and they pick their materials and design it, and then never thinking that one day nobody could live in it because it was in the state this one was in when I first saw it. So I think bringing it back to its former glory, you know, Pinterest, house, and all of that, seeing what it could be, is what made me get into it. We took everything to zero and started all over again. So there's a few original things in there, the flooring, the staircase, the mantels, those kind of things are all still there, but everything else was gone. So we took it from zero to what it is today. It was a great project, and I'm sure, like many others have said, you have to be crazy to get into it because you don't know what's going to happen. You can't predict when you restore an older home what you're going to find, what's going to happen. Are the floors going to always slope? And yes, they are always going to slope. You can't fix that. But no, I think it's a little bit of love, a little bit of crazy, you know, just bringing it back to its former glory.
Congratulations. All right, next up we have the Citywide Historic Preservation Award, and the award winner for this is Mr. and Mrs. George Knoll at 924 Maryland Avenue. 924 Maryland Avenue has been a labor of love for the Knolls for the past 9 years. The home is another example of the colonial revival style and was also designed by architect C.B. Kierfeld. It was built between 1920 and 1926 by E. Muncie and Maxie Slack. Mr. Muncie and his father are important to our city's history, as they were founders and owners of many newspapers in the region, including the newspapers that would become the Bristol Herald Courier. A fire destroyed the roof of this house in 2007. After the fire, the house sat condemned for a year until it was purchased by Mr. Knoll in 2008. The Knolls repaired the fire damage and set about rehabilitating the interior into their private residence and 6 apartments. The project has been so near and dear to the Knolls' heart that George became a licensed contractor himself to oversee the project, and the Knolls even named their 2 dogs, Muncie and Maxie, after the original owners of the house.
Well, we've done major work, obviously, because there was a fire in 2007 that took out this side of the roof, and it was empty for about a year. So we got a new roof on it, all new framing on the 2nd floor. The outside has been left pretty much as we found it. I mean, cleaned up and painted, of course. And the common areas inside are all as we found it pretty much, and then all the apartments are more modern.
I think the interesting aspect of it is he's from Philadelphia, I'm from Indiana, that we came together and now we're so concerned and love this historical house in Bristol, Tennessee. You know, we're not even natives, but we feel through this project that we are now.
And it was exciting to see how important it was to the Slack family to see it restored, because this is their family history too.
One of my favorite things is to show it off to friends and family and anybody who wants to see the inside. I have to say, Maxie lost the house in the late 30s when she moved out, and I felt like I was redoing it for her because it was her dream house.
Okay, so we're down to our final award, which is our Stewardship Award. So this is the first year of this program for us, and as everybody knows, the first year of any program or project, you take it on and see what works and what doesn't, reevaluate and change it up for the next year. But we, as our committee met, as our nominations came in and our committee met, it became readily apparent that we were missing an award. And so the committee took a look at it and they said, you know what, we need to create this award for an individual, not a building, an individual that has had tremendous impact and done a lot of special things for Bristol's Historic Preservation Committee. So as the committee reviewed these nomination forms, a familiar name kept reoccurring, and that name is Alan Hurley. Little research determined that Mr. Hurley didn't own 1, didn't own 2, didn't own 3, didn't own 4 buildings in the historic downtown, but he owned 8 in total. So that video footage shows you the tremendous stake that Mr. Hurley has in downtown. And as I was going to say during the video, the awards committee decided to create the first Historic Preservation Stewardship Award to recognize those individuals who've gone above and beyond. Those who have ensured that preservation of historic properties through their revitalization efforts and through the superlative management of the building, or buildings in this case, in their care. And this has been a little bit of a secret category, so I hope it is still a surprise to Mr. Hurley tonight. A few people that got a preemptive information about this, advance news, have said so many things, so many nice things about Mr. Hurley's work, calling him determined, focused, generous. Every single person said generous. An igniter, a spark, and a tremendous asset for downtown. So with that, it's my pleasure to acknowledge his investment, heart, and care for historic buildings and announce Mr. Alan Hurley as the first recipient for the City of Bristol's Historic Preservation Stewardship Award. Thank you again for everybody taking your time to come out tonight, and congratulations one more time to those folks going home with an award tonight.